The Atlantic Ocean has always been a keeper of secrets. For millennia, its restless tides have swallowed coastlines, islands, and entire civilizations, hiding them beneath a shroud of cold, blue silence. But every so often, the sea gives something back. We are heading to the turbulent waters off the western tip of Brittany, France. Here, a discovery has emerged from the depths that completely challenges our understanding of human history. It is not a ship of gold or a lost palace, but something far more primal and profound. It is a massive stone wall, built by human hands 7,000 years ago, now resting in the twilight zone of the ocean floor. This is the story of the Île de Sein wall, a ghost from the Stone Age that refuses to remain buried. The story begins not with a diver, but with a beam of light in 2017. Yves Fouquet, a geologist with IFRAMER, the French National Institute for Ocean Science, was meticulously analyzing bathymetric maps of the Breton coast. These were not standard charts. They were created using LiDAR, a laser-based remote sensing technology that effectively strips away the water to reveal the naked topography of the seabed. Fouquet was studying an area known as the Chaussée de Sein. This place is notorious among sailors. It is a chaotic, jagged extension of the Île de Sein, a place where currents rip at 7 knots and the Atlantic swells shatter against submerged granite teeth. It is a place of shipwrecks, not settlements. Yet, as Fouquet zoomed in on a sector known as Toul Ar Fort, about a mile west of the island, he saw something that simply should not exist. Amidst the chaotic, fractal shapes of natural granite formations, there was a line. A perfectly straight, unnatural line cutting across a submerged valley. There is an old adage in geology that nature does not draw straight lines. While not entirely true, as fault lines can be straight, this feature was different. It was 120 meters long, distinctly raised from the seabed, and appeared to block a channel. Fouquet remained skeptical. He later admitted that at first, he did not believe it, thinking it was just a digital artifact of the LiDAR data. He filed the anomaly away, a digital curiosity in a sea of data. It would take 5 years for the truth to surface. In May 2022, a team of divers from the SAM, the Association for Archaeology and Maritime History, was operating in the area. These were seasoned veterans, accustomed to the treacherous conditions of the Breton coast. They had finished a dive near the famous Armin lighthouse, and, realizing they had air left in their tanks, decided to investigate the anomaly Fouquet had noted years prior. Descending into the green gloom, fighting the rip of the current, they reached the seabed at a depth of roughly 9 meters, or 30 feet. What they found left them breathless. Looming out of the algae and silt was a wall. It was not a random pile of rocks. It was a deliberate, engineered fortification. The structure, later designated TAF-1, was composed of massive granite blocks stacked with intention. More shockingly, it was reinforced with upright stone slabs known as megaliths, or orthostats, some standing nearly 2 meters tall. These acted as a skeleton for the wall, a technique that requires planning, immense physical strength, and social organization. Philippe Boudnais, the president of the Archaeology Association, stated that it was undeniable. They were looking at a man-made structure in a place where no man could breathe. Over the next 2 years, between 2022 and 2024, the team conducted nearly 60 dives. They battled short windows of calm weather and fierce tides to document the site. They did not just find one wall, they found a complex. The full scope of the discovery, which was published in the International Journal of Nautical Archaeology in late 2025, describes a landscape that was once a bustling center of human activity. The main wall, TAF-1, is the crown jewel. It is 120 meters long, approximately 20 meters wide at its base, and stands up to 2 meters high. It is built from local granite using a double-facing technique. This involves 2 outer rows of large vertical stones with a core filled with smaller rubble. This is a classic dry stone walling technique, but applied here on a monumental scale. The divers counted over 60 distinct upright stones. These are not mere pebbles. They are multi-ton pillars that had to be quarried, transported, and levered into place. Surrounding this main barrier, the divers found other structures designated TAF-2 and TAF-3. These appear to be smaller walls and barriers that seem to work in concert with the main wall. They also found a feature labeled YAG3C, which is a fascinating alignment of small monoliths spaced about a meter apart, running for 50 meters. This looks less like a wall and more like a fence, or a specific funneling mechanism. The preservation is miraculous. For 7,000 years, storms have battered the Atlantic coast, yet these stones have held their ground, protected partly by the depth and partly by the sheer solidity of their construction. But the most explosive aspect of this discovery is the date. Dating stone is notoriously difficult because granite cannot be radiocarbon dated. However, archaeologists can date the context. By analyzing the depth of the wall and reconstructing the history of sea level rise, the team, led by archaeologist Yvonne Payer of the University of Western Brittany, pinpointed the construction window. The wall was built between 5800 and 5300 BCE. This date shatters our timeline for two reasons. First, it predates the famous Karnak stones. The vast alignments of Karnak are one of the wonders of the prehistoric world, but they were erected roughly 1,000 years after this wall. This means the tradition of moving massive stones in Brittany is far older than we previously thought. Second, and perhaps more importantly, it straddles two worlds. This period marks the transition between the Mesolithic and the Neolithic eras. For decades, the standard view of history was that Mesolithic hunter-gatherers were nomads who lived in small bands and built nothing permanent. The heavy lifting of civilization, such as monumental architecture and large settlements, was supposed to arrive with agriculture in the Neolithic. The Ile de Sein wall destroys that assumption. It proves that the indigenous hunter-gatherer populations of Atlantic Europe were sedentary, sophisticated, and capable of massive communal labor projects long before the first wheat seed was sown in the region. They did not need farms to build empires. They had the sea. This brings us to the question of purpose. Why build a 120-meter wall that is now underwater? The answer lies in the environment of the past. 7,000 years ago, the sea level was roughly 9 to 10 meters lower than it is today. The Ile de Sein was not an island, but a prominent hill at the end of a long peninsula connected to the French mainland. The submerged plateau where the divers swam was, back then, a coastal plain. It was an intertidal zone that flooded at high tide and drained at low tide. The leading theory is that TAF1 was a fishery, or a fish weir. Imagine the mechanism. The wall was built across a natural valley on the shoreline. At high tide, the ocean would flood over the wall, bringing with it schools of fish like bass, mackerel, and mullet. As the tide receded, the water would drain away, but the wall would act as a barrier. The water would filter through the stones, or a sluice gate, but the fish would be trapped behind it, thrashing in shallow pools, ready to be harvested by the basket load. This was not subsistence fishing, this was industrial-scale food production. A trap of this size could feed a large, permanent community. It suggests a society that was farming the ocean. However, there is a darker, more poignant theory proposed by some researchers, including Pollier. They suggest a secondary or alternative purpose: defense. During this period, the sea was rising. The glaciers of the last ice age were melting, and the ocean was encroaching on the land at a rate of several millimeters a year. To a person living on that ancient coast, the change would have been visible within a single lifetime. Elders would remember meadows that were now beaches, and grandchildren would see those beaches become the sea. Was this wall an attempt to hold back the rising tide? Was it a prehistoric dike meant to protect a precious lagoon or a low-lying settlement? If so, it is a tragic monument. It represents a desperate, monumental effort to fight a losing battle against the changing climate. The ocean was relentless. Eventually, the waves breached the wall, the lagoon flooded, and the people were forced to retreat to higher ground, the ground that is now the Ile de Sein. It is impossible to discuss submerged walls in Brittany without invoking the legend of the city of Wise. According to Breton folklore, Wise was a magnificent city built on the coast, protected from the sea by a massive golden dike. It was ruled by the benevolent King Gradlon. But the city fell into debauchery, and his daughter, the Princess Dahut, was tricked by the devil into stealing the key to the sluice gates. She opened them, and the ocean rushed in, drowning the city in a single night. Only the king escaped. For centuries, this was treated as a fairy tale, a moral fable about sin and punishment. But the discovery of the Ile de Sein wall forces us to look at the legend with new eyes. Myths often serve as the archive of pre-literate societies. They preserve the collective trauma of catastrophic events. Is the legend of Wise a distorted memory of the submergence of these Neolithic landscapes? The researchers noted that the abandonment of a territory developed by a highly structured society likely became deeply rooted in people's memories. The time frame aligns perfectly. The drowning of the coastal plains wasn't a single wave, but a relentless encroachment that destroyed the old world of the ancestors. The image of a great wall failing to hold back the sea is not just a story. It is a historical reality that happened right there at Toul Ar Fat. The wall found by the divers is, in a very real sense, the physical skeleton of the myth of Wise. The discovery of the Ile de Sein wall is likely just the beginning. The floor of the Atlantic Shelf is a museum that has barely been visited. Yves Fouquet has noted that we have only explored a tiny fraction of what is down there. The conditions are extreme, but the rewards are history-changing. This wall forces a rewrite of European prehistory. It tells us that the Atlantic facade of Europe was home to powerful, innovative societies that utilized stone engineering earlier than we imagined. It bridges the gap between the nomadic past and the monumental future of the megalith builders. Today, the wall sits silent in the gloom, colonized by kelp and sea stars. But it is no longer forgotten. It stands as a testament to human ingenuity. It is a voice from the deep, reminding us that our battle with the rising seas is not new. We have fought the ocean before. We built walls. And the ocean won.